I can't say nothing to defend Temba. It's because he's not put in a place where he's going to shine. Why even put Temba there? Why must his emotion or his confidence take that hit? Why must we be up one day
what
and
I'm
then down the other way?
is that it doesn't take a hit because, again, the evidence suggests that it doesn't. Again, if we are centering this on Temba as an example.
So Jay, say it doesn't take a hit because he performs in the Test cricket. But in the ODI, it's never going to work because...
It was the days before Christmas, and guess what you came to find under your Christmas tree? The present that keeps on giving. It is Tour Front, as always, with you during the festive season. My name is Jay. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. And as always, I'm joined by Chuck after some 3-0 there against Bournemouth. How are you doing, Chuck?
Hey, so the Twitter account, Man United suggested there are gifts to be given on Christmas, and Bournemouth said thanks for the gifts. So we were in a giving mood. It's Christmas, so traditions stay the same. Hopefully, post this recording, post the weekend's results, we can give gifts to ourselves and to this fan base as a Man United supporter. But all in all, Jay, I am well. Speaking about gifts, we gave Pakistan 3 games. We got whitewashed in the ODI series. It was not
First
pretty
time ever.
watching. Yeah, first time ever. The
In
pink
South
day
Africa.
in South Africa. Okay. The pink day continues to be up and down. I mean, when it started, it was amazing. You wanted to be there at the Wanderers because we won most of those games. And since then, a couple of odd results or unfavorable results have crept up in that particular day, on that particular day and night game, I guess, of celebrating breast cancer awareness. Jay, we were whipped in that one. We set the total in the first ODI. We're chasing in both those ODIs. It didn't matter because ultimately we lost all 3 of those games. Do you think this affects the confidence of the boys, seeing that majority or half at least of the ODI squad is named in the test side that's going to be playing for the Test Championship? Do you think this has any bearing on how we play our red ball cricket?
No. Some bearing maybe, but not to a point where I'd be concerned. First of all, the white ball team and the red ball team are 2 different teams, right? And the most glaring difference is the fact that the white ball is coached by Rob Walter and the red ball cricket is coached by Shukri. And Chuck, you even look at someone like a Temba Bavuma who didn't do anything with the bat in the ODI series, but still very much trust him in the Test series based on what he's done. Not only the previous Test series against Sri Lanka, but in the preceding years to this one, right? And in fact, I would actually take away some confidence. You look at someone like a Coben Bosch. Coben Bosch is in that Test team as an all-rounder, and he did well with the bat in the last game, even though the Proteas lost that last game. He scored 40 not out in that match. But when you saw his name being announced in the Test squad, you were maybe scratching your head a bit in terms of why go for this particular player. And there are arguments out there that there are other players who are ahead of him in the pecking order and maybe who should have gotten a call-up. But where Shukri is concerned, I learned my lesson when he called up Dane Patterson, because that was the question, right? Dane Patterson is 35. He's not really been in the Proteas setup for a long time. What is he really going to give us? And then Dane Patterson comes through in that match he was selected for, and he takes a 5-er, and you look at the bowling side of Coben Bosch in particular, because we've had such a spate of injuries where the bowling is concerned, and he's got an average, I believe, of 36 or 37, which does not fill you with much confidence. But as I'm saying, based on what I've sseen most recently with Dane Patterson and his selection, in Coach Shukri, I trust, and I do trust that the team that is the test team is a different outfit. Maybe not all together, because there's an overlap, of course, in terms of the players. But when I think, when I made the example of Temba Bavuma, I think of someone like Kagiso Rabada. Kagiso Rabada is an all-time great. And I think it's not controversial to say that mainly in Test cricket. When you compare what he's done in white ball cricket, it's still good, but it's not on those all-time levels where when you speak about him in Test cricket, Kagiso Rabada went to 300 wickets in terms of strike rate, has the best to ever do it, So you are speaking about Kagiso Rabada as maybe perhaps in that conversation of the greatest fast bowlers not only South Africa has produced, but that has ever been. That's not quite the conversation when you speak about Kagiso Rabada and the ODIs. And this is true then in a larger scale of both teams. So while it was disappointing that the Proteas did get swept in that ODI series against Pakistan, I do expect the Proteas to be a different side altogether by the time the test matches kick off on Boxing Day.
We've seen Jekyll and Hyde, but then we see them play particularly well red ball cricket, but then with the white ball, when you look at India coming to play T20s, when you look at the ODI we've played against Pakistan at this point in time, we do perform differently, right? And to answer the question initially, I guess I'd have to say and agree with you that no, it's not going to affect our red ball cricket in terms of how we play and what the things that are required to win a test match are different to what you would need to win an ODI game or T20 game. For starters, you've got more time out to bat. You can build a rhythm. Whereas, for instance, with ODI, if Jansen is bowling wise and he can't correct, by the time he gets his rhythm right, it's like 5 overs in and they've probably batted him for like 6-7 runs and over, and you can't really get that back. Whereas in test cricket, you can somewhat make amends for errors that you've made in the field, or maybe with the bat, for instance, because you've got the time to do that. But I keep thinking to myself, Jay, for instance, with the English side, that whenever they're playing good ODI cricket, because it's the same management, and they pick half of the team that plays ODI cricket plays test cricket, you can somewhat translate their success into test cricket. And so I ask myself in terms of, if one team is not pulling its weight to one side, and you've got Markram still there, Bavuma still there, Sorawara still there, does it not affect eventually? Because you've got two different coaches, two different styles of play, two different voices in terms of the mentoring of how to steer the ship. I always ask myself, will it not eventually come together to a point where we're like, we are not picking up, we're not compounding on the success of the test cricket, because whenever it turns to white ball cricket, we don't play so well. I think about that constantly, Jay, because eventually you want to have, or you emulate careers like Jacques Kallis. And I know I'm talking about all-time greats here when I'm talking about Jacques Kallis, but red ball cricket, you can depend on him. White ball might not score as fast as you'd want him to, but dependable as well. Amla eventually, someone you can depend on. Graham Smith, Sean Pollock, Dale Steyn. And you don't want to then chop and change and say, but Rabada's not as good in the white ball. Or you don't want to say, but Tampa's not as good in the white ball. Because for me, if you want to be a good cricketer, you should be able to do it in all formats. And currently we have a side that is not necessarily the greatest in the white ball format. We did fairly well in the World Cups, right? And we should say kudos to that. But the choking thing keeps coming up. But when you look at how we performed as a test side, we were probably second best in the last 15 years. And so I think at some point, those two ideals, those two sides must come together to co-benefit or to pull each other down. So I've got concerns, but in terms of this particular series that we're going to play next, I am not concerned, but eventually I think those concerns will come.
I'm not as concerned, Chuck, because, and in my mind, I think we're at a point where we can call the different mediums as different sports. Because when you say, when you mention those players of old, and when you put across that in order to be a good or great cricketer, you need to be adaptable across all formats, right? And I think where we're going, where we're headed, and what we've already seen actually for a long while, is that there is specialization. You think of somebody like the West Indian batsman,
Chris Gale.
No, Kieran Pollard.
All right,
we're the all-rounder. We're talking about Kieran Pollard and how he's made his name like playing franchise cricket, T20 cricket, right? That he's been a T20 cricketer. That's how you're gonna remember him. You think then of other players who are more comfortable playing in the longer format. So it's a different environment altogether. Even the circumstances of the matches. Like, one of the things that is glaring with the Proteas in ODI cricket is that we cannot chase high scores. You look back at the match against Afghanistan, where Afghanistan, I believe, posted 284. We couldn't chase that down. When they posted below 200, we did. And then in these matches here that we just played, both times we were chasing over 300, we could not chase that down. And in the series before, I believe against Ireland, when they posted 311, we could not chase that down. Whereas that question, and that's a question for me and a concern for me when we go into the Champions Trophy next year, right? what are we going to do when teams invariably are going to be batting first and putting up big totals against the Proteas? But in Test match cricket, you don't really have that kind of scoreboard pressure in the same way as you do in ODI cricket. You're not thinking to yourself, man, as soon as we win the toss, what we need to do here, we need to bat instead of score. That is something that develops more organically as a test match goes, but it's not something that is as glaring as you see in the ODIs. And as I'm saying, the players are different players in the different mediums. Themba Bavuma was speaking about the fact that, number one, we don't play ODI cricket as much as we used to do, right? We're playing T20s and we're playing test match cricket. ODIs are like that awkward middle child where what are we really supposed to do here? Because you can't go too hard as you do in T20 cricket. Like one commentator I was listening to was saying, if you're 7 down in T20 cricket, it's not a train smash because you're probably 15 overs in and you can still set a good score. If you won 20-7, that's not really bad with 5 overs to go. Whereas you can't be at that score in ODI cricket, but players play so much T20 cricket, but there needs to be an adjustment to the ODIs. Whereas and this is what Themba Bavuma was talking about, that you still need some of the patience you show in Test match cricket, but you need the acceleration that you show in T20 cricket. So the other thing is that ODI cricket, because it's played not as often as those other two mediums, is maybe a bit of an anomaly. And so you go back to Test match cricket, you've got the luxury of being able to set up an innings. You don't have to go helter-skelter from the beginning, which is why, again, I made the example of Themba Bavuma, that when you ask Themba Bavuma perhaps to start playing shots at the top of an innings, that's not maybe his best approach to batting. But when he's in a position where he can set up his innings, that's better overall. Same thing with the bowlers, right? You don't have to be trying to strike balls every single time. You have the luxury of setting up bowlers. And even with the innings, there are occasions where it looks like we're collapsing. I believe in one, I think in the first test against Sri Lanka, there was a point where it looked like we're going to be bowled out for under 200. But then there was a Themba coming through with a 70. In the second innings, I believe it was the same test, if not the second test, where Bavuma and Stubbs came together for that partnership where they both scored centuries. You can recover the match because there's time. Whereas in ODIs, maybe you don't have that luxury. So I think the main thing, Chuck, that I'm trying to bring across is that it's a different approach and a different mindset, and the pressure also is different when you switch over to Test match cricket, having come from the ODIs.
So for me, Jay, here's my thinking, right? And I know you need to have the batting firepower and the players to do it. I think baseball for me is exactly how I think about cricket in terms of if you guys could do it and you were playing each ball on merit, or maybe you're a little aggressive in the ODIs and you can set up a 350 comfortably. You can approach 400.
The only reason you say that is because you find Test cricket boring
no,
and you just want it to be played like baseball. That's all. You just want entertainment. It's not a matter of like, oh man, you see, it's working across all formats. For you, it's working because it's entertaining.
No, but listen to what I'm saying, right? England live and die by the sword. They lost by 600 runs or whatever to New Zealand the one day. But apart from that, this format has been largely working, or this approach to playing test cricket this way has been largely working. And I say that because the players that play test cricket are the same ones who are playing the ODIs. Because if we have specialists, why is Bavuma allowed to go in and suffer in the ODI when we know it's not his game? Why don't we have Matthew Brisker come ahead of him all the time and just leave Themba to play test cricket? We did that with players like Ashim Amla, at some point, and then he upped his scoring rate, and you're like, well, actually, if he's able to defend and have a good series in the test, why not include him in the ODIs? And I think towards the end, he was scoring quite freely, and you were happy to have Amla in there. So my point is this, Jay: if we have both sets of players who will play both formats, and in one they excel and one they are poor in, how do you just switch on and say, well, I suck at this one, but I'll give it a go? How do you give it a go if it's not your thing? If in terms of there's two different games, there's two different approaches to it, why don't we have the guys who just play test cricket, the guys who just play ODIs? And then I think we'll have better success, because my whole thing is this, Jay, if we are going to be using the same guys anyway, how do they switch on and off? And why don't we just have the guy who's switched on ODI, play ODI, the guy who's switched on test cricket, play test cricket? Because if you're not going to put you into your strong suit and we expect you to perform still, is that not unfair? That's why I think eventually these things will come together for better or worse. One form will affect the other.
I don't think so, Chuck. As I'm saying, I think it's different formats, and these guys are professionals. And because the approach is so different, the outcomes tend to be different. That is why when you consider the white ball cricket, there are questions around Rob Walter. I mean, Rob Walter says that we're going to turn up at the Champions Trophy and he believes that we're going to play better. He doesn't give reasons as to why we that's suddenly going to happen when we get there. And I don't have all that much confidence in Rob Walter. I don't have all that much confidence on a regular basis in our white ball teams, which you then just saw Pakistan ring us to the tune of a whitewash. But then when we get into the test matches, we've been good throughout the year, which is why we are in a position throughout the cycle of this World Test Championships, which is why we are in a position to needing to only win one test match in order to qualify for the final at Lord's. So it hasn't overlapped, regardless of what has happened in the World Cup. So when we were choking and we made it to the final, and the outcomes there were the outcomes there. When we then put on the whites of Test match cricket, we've been a transformed team. It's been day and night. In some instances, we came from the embarrassment, if you want to say it, of losing a series, the ODI series to Afghanistan. But then when it was time to play Bangladesh in the Test matches, it seemed as if that wasn't even something we just experienced not too long ago. So I think the pattern will just continue because there's evidence that this is how it has gone, regardless of what has happened in the white ball cricket. When we have then switched to Test match cricket, it's been a totally transformed team, and the results are there to bear the fruit of that.
So, for instance, right, in closing, here's my argument and where it stands. If there are two different formats, we've got two different coaches at the helm of two different formats. Why don't we have two different groups of players for each format?
Because there are players whose skills do translate.
And I say that, Jay, and when their skills do translate, we see in India, who's doing well in both formats. In England and Australia, who do well in both formats. In New Zealand, you can even add Pakistan at this point, do well in both formats. Why are we Jekyll and Hyde? And why is this acceptable? Because if Temba Bavuma shines in the ODI and we're then saying, okay, where are the haters now? And then the white ball cricket comes, you're like, I can't say nothing to defend Temba. It's because he's not put in a place where he's going to shine. Why even put Temba there? Why must his emotion or his confidence take that hit? Why must we be up one day and then down the other way?
What I'm saying is that it doesn't take a hit because, again, the evidence suggests that it doesn't. Again, if we are centering this on Temba as an example.
So Jay, say it doesn't take a hit because he performs in the Test cricket. But in the ODI, it's never going to work because we are his back the whole time.
So that's what I'm saying. That's a totally different conversation because you are now asking why aren't we as good in the white ball cricket, which is another conversation. We'll have that chat. But in terms of it's affecting the red ball cricket, I think, as I'm saying, and the evidence says that it doesn't because they play differently. They are different players, and why that is, as I'm saying, that's a whole other chat, which maybe is why Shukri should probably take over the white ball cricket as well, and he might give the answers to the questions that you are asking, along with the question that we are trying to answer as well, in terms of will it affect the confidence? I don't think so, Chuck. I think we go into the Pakistan series and we'll win that first one. Even in Centurion, we'll be there for that one, in fact, and we'll be riding all the way to the World Test Championship. All right. Tell us what you think, because Chuck is asking the questions. Why does it not translate? Maybe you have an answer before we actually have an attempt at that. So if you do have an answer, tell us why you think we're not as good in the white ball cricket as we are in the red ball cricket as well. Do you think that what happened with the whitewash is going to affect what happens in the upcoming Test match series, where we're looking to make it to the World Test Championship final at Lord's? But Chuck, if we go then to the game of football, man, the story that broke the past week is that the Mamelodi Sundowns have placed the women's coach, Jerry Tshabalala, on special leave while an investigation is underway to accusations that have been leveled against him of being inappropriate. He's being accused of making sexual comments, not only to the players, but to the other female staff. And one of the things that has been detailed, or that has been reported upon, is asking the players how often they shave their private parts, or what they are shaped like. And if all of this is proven to be true, it is absolutely disgusting and absolutely damning. And I have to ask you the question, Chuck. We've heard from some circles that this is why, and some people are using this as evidence as to why male coaches should not be coaching female teams, which I would then say applies the other direction, where women should not be coaching men's teams, right? Where do you stand on that? Should men be able to coach women? Should women be able to coach men in football? Or should they not, so as to avoid such things from happening as Jerry Tshabalala is being accused of?
I think, as we've seen in society, right, that men and women, one, can coexist, but there are boundaries or there are guidelines in terms of here's how we do coexist. That's the very same reason why you go to a restaurant. There's a men's and a women's bathroom. Not because all of us have genders, but if we stick to these guidelines, then you limit the possibility of anything heinous or anything otherwise happening. You go that way, but as soon as you come out, we can go sit at the same table in the restaurant. You can leave and go in the same car. That's fine. But when there's certain things like privacy that are needed, let's go that way, you go that way, and we avoid each other. And so I think, like with the stories that are being said, obviously still under investigation, that you walk into the change room or walking while the girls are still underdressed, and you're like, but Jerry, you should know that's not your place at that point in time. I mean, tactics. I mean, you could have standard laws in terms of the first 10 minutes after, maybe in the first 5 minutes after halftime are mine. I'll give you those instructions, and then it's up to you guys to do whatever you want to do in that space and be comfortable in that space. But obviously, the point of contention comes in the idea that it's coaching, or at least is a battle of the mind. If you're a good enough coach as a male, why not give your coaching nuance and your tactics and your ideas to the women's side as well? If you're like, for instance, there were ideas of the English female side was coached by a Dutch woman in terms of what's the next step for her? Does she go and coach a men's side? Can those methods and those ideas translate to a men's side? And for me, why not? Because it's all football at the end of the day. But then she should also be able to then say, with the guys, first 10 minutes is mine. After that, do what you got to do as guys. I'll not be in your way. And so, to answer the question, Jay, I think it'll be tricky because of norms. We're used to women coaching women, boys coaching boys. Like, for instance, at PE, I mean, thinking about this now, I can't even give you an answer. When I was in PE, whenever the boys were doing swimming or whether we were playing football, whatever it was, some teacher took the boys and we did our thing. And then at the end of the day, the girls did their thing. And at the end of that period, we come together for English or maths or whatever it is together, right? And so I can't even tell you why, apart from us changing in different bathrooms, which are already established, I can't tell you why we couldn't play football or touch or whatever with the ladies. I don't know why. But what I'm trying to get at, Jay, ultimately my answer is that men and women can coexist. Even in the sporting field, they should coexist, because just because there's a female coach or a male coach in a female group or a female coach in a male group does not mean that say for instance the famous Chelsea physio, everyone knew who she was because of her looks. She stood out. She was there working with the guys. There were no stories of improper conduct because she was doing her job the way she's supposed to do her job. And so if you do what you're supposed to do and you do what you're there for, primarily, you do what you're there for, there shouldn't be any issues, because it's not a strength contest. It's not a beauty contest. It's a battle of wits. If you've got enough knowledge, if you've got enough experience, take the job. Give us what you have. And so follow those guidelines. Everything should be hunky-dory. I mean, for instance, even if it was a matter of Jerry being with guys, obviously it won't be as big a story. But imagine Jerry's like, hey, Temba or Jabu or Scott, why aren't you shaving? Why is your thing shaped like that? That's still inappropriate. So if you just become normal and you're like, dude, let me just pass on this message. I need you to do this and that and that. Or if you want to be one of the guys, don't be weird. Just don't be weird.
I think that's the message, Chuck. Don't be weird. Don't be a sexual deviant.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary, you know. And I'm with you, Chuck. I do think you should be. I do think men should be able to coach women's teams, and I do think women should be able to coach men's teams. You think of Serena Wegman, the coach of the English women's team, or you think of Anema Hayes, who previously coached Chelsea and now is coaching the USA women's teams. And there's been intrigue, right, in terms of looking at their success in the women's game, how that would translate into the men's game. Because ultimately, as you're saying, when we're talking about coaching, we're not talking about any physical output. It is how you understand the game, and if it translates in terms of the tactical approach on the one side, it should on the other side. There are other differences, of course. The temperaments, I do believe, between men and women are different, but I don't think that's a gap you wouldn't be able to cover. You know, where there's a question, Chuck, and if I'm being honest, is with the men, right? And the reason I say that is because along with the story with Jerry Tshabalala, if you then look at the history of the world and the movements that started reporting on things, it was not because things started to happen now. That's why we're hearing about them. It was that people started to talk about them. So you wonder as well if history holds, or if that holds, how many of these incidents have happened over the years, right? But then also, Chuck, anecdotally, another example of this was with the Spanish women's team. On the biggest night of Spanish women's football, you have the coach kissing the player on the mouth, and the uproar that happened there. And that was not just the only incident, right? Because those players did come out asking for the coach to be removed from his post, not only because of that, but because of other incidents that they've had with him. So it really is, as you said, stop being this way. It's unnecessary. You are there to coach. Why are you suddenly looking at these women as a piece of meat, or as an opportunity for you to go into the dressing room and cop a look? How old are you? Like, what are we talking about here? What the hell? What the hell is happening? Because if you're there just to do your job, Chuck, you and I could tomorrow decide to book ourselves into a spa, right, and have a massage, and we might come across a masseuse who's a man. We might come across a masseuse that is a woman, and it should not make a difference other than the fact that, or what you need to do is just lie there and let somebody do their job. Same thing as if you go to the doctor. I know as an adult, I've had a questions like, man, I don't know if I want to pull my pants down for this lady to put her syringe in my butt. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if I want this dude to look at my butt and put a syringe in there. And that's just a personal feeling, right? But in actual fact, that's not then a projection for me to make onto those health professionals, because what they're doing their jobs. And if you are there to just do your job, just do your damn job and forget everything else. You're a coach, they are players. What you need to do is just maintain that relationship of coach and player. Coach these players and have them go out and play. And I keep coming back to what you said. Just don't be weird.
Yeah.
And because it's disappointing, right? Because we're talking about sexual harassment here. If what's being reported comes out to be true, and we can't have that, man. These are things that we're trying to eliminate from society as a whole, and we should absolutely do that in football as well. And I do think then football and sport does have a unique opportunity to be able to integrate the men and the women in such a situation and not have these stories prop up.
I mean, it's a sad story in terms of they see, because obviously it's still ongoing, right? And things will be found out, things will be said, and we'll understand the whole picture. But if Jerry is indeed guilty and he gets to leave, now Sundowns have to find a female coach, because if there's another male coach who comes in,
those players are likely to be uncomfortable.
Their trust is at an all-time low for male figures in terms of a coaching position. So it ruins a whole lot of things. I mean, it's not just you, if you are guilty, that then it doesn't affect you. It affects everyone else, because regardless of what I know, what I can give to the team, because I'm a male guy, all of a sudden if I walk into the change room, they're like, he's going to do it again, you know? And I mean, maybe the fix is that get a female assistant, but do you need someone to police you or to read the room for you and say, Jerry, just give the girls 5 minutes and then you can speak to them? I mean, you should know how things operate by now, because he's been at the helm for long enough. He knows when they're probably indecent or probably because there are things, cultures develop in a team, and you know that at this time here's what's probably happening. At this time here's when it's most appropriate to speak about things. So it's
Chuck, it's not even
bad.
a matter of it's awkward, right? That man, he might walk in and this might happen, because like it's just setting up a system. And as you say, you've been there that long, and the system is not even that hard. Where it's a matter of, well, we know what time kickoff is. You said that like 5 minutes before, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before. Can we make sure that everybody is dressed and is decent, and the coach comes in at that point? At halftime, there's no need for people to be taking off their clothes if that's what you want to communicate. And halftime, I come in, I make whatever speech I need to make. We keep our clothes on, whatever the case may be, and we go out there. And then after the match, if it's a matter of saying, well, maybe I'll talk to the players afterwards, they can go to the showers and get dressed and get ready, then I'll come in. Or you come in first, because that's immediately after the match, right? And as soon as you are done, you're out of there. As I'm saying, Chuck, it's not the hardest thing. You and I worked at a camp. right? And we had boys and girls, and you knew that if I need to pass on a message to the girls at a particular time, I'll ask one of the female facilitators, or I know that I'll wait for them. I'll give them a message as a group that, guys, you go and shower and you'll find me out here, and we need to go here at a certain time. It really is not. It's not rocket science. Like so it's not even a matter of, man, it might be an awkward situation in terms of the setup. No, this what we're talking about here is people who want to do the things that they're doing. It's people who are abusing their positions of power, and people who are harassing people.
Yeah. People are looking for an opportunity. Because
that's all it is, Charles.
There's never a time, like, obviously I'm not too sure what happens in a female's dressing room, and it's not like the guys. You know, like how we see the Bafana videos and they're seeing Temba's one and Temba's got his top off or whatever. And it's all right, it's a room full of guys. Cool. I don't think the girls act much different, and even if they did, you understand that and you give that space because, like I said, Jay, I don't think the girls are there naked halftime and they're running around. They're there for tactical knowledge. They're there to take a break and to go back again. Afterwards, you give them their space. Like, what could be happening in the confines of, like, actual work? I think you just, like, you hear the water running and you're like, now's my chance. Because the girls know what time it is, Jay. They've got 15 minutes before it's the second half. Like, why would they be indecent? And even if you can't get to them because of whatever's happening, you don't do that. You don't,
no,
because
you don't.
It's just not your time. It's not your space at that point in time. That happens. That applies to all walks of life. Sometimes there's a time to do it and time not to do it, you know? And that applies to just about everything. So, yeah, man, it's sad news because the girls are there to try and make a living. Or they're really not earning as much as the guys. It's already hard enough to be a female footballer in the world, never mind South Africa.
That's the thing, right, Chuck?
Yeah.
Like they already have so many hardships that they have to deal with this as well.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
It's perfectly...
That's really disappointing. That's really, really
and
disappointing.
And also, if Jerry is guilty, dude, you just ruined your whole reputation.
Your career.
It doesn't matter what you know about football at this point in time. You just can't be trusted with the people that you're supposed to be. You know how when managers come across and they're like, I'm their father figure or I'm their big brother or whatever, and therefore it's not just a professional level, but they come to me with their problems. No one's gonna come to you when you're this kind of person.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jay, football got us a little emotional or heated. But yeah, truth is, it's not acceptable. And guys, let us know what you think. Do you think females and males can coexist in a football setting, in a sporting setting where one is a coach and the players are of a different gender? Do you think it works? And how do you think we get to a system that works? I think those things are already established, but this suggests that there might be tweaks or adjustments that are needed. But Jay, when we go to adjustments and tweaks, Liverpool don't need any tweaks or adjustments because they're flying right now. They smashed 6 goals past Spurs. At the London Stadium or the Tottenham Hotspurs Stadium, in the last 3 match days, there have been 23 goals. I don't know if that's still football. From what I understood from Mourinho's training days, whenever games got to 5-4, he was like, guys, nah, let's do something else because you're not playing football. Spurs are happy to do this every other match day. Jay, after seeing that display, Spurs were woeful, right? Rather, the question is it more that Spurs were woeful or Liverpool were that brilliant?
It's a combination of both, right, Chuck? But, man, I don't want to take away from Liverpool, but Ange Postecoglou Spurs. No, man.
Not the one.
Who's the centre back who's recently come in? Dragusin, right? So when you look at the goal, and I want like analyzing. If you analyze the 5th goal that Liverpool scored, Dragusin jumps from his centre back position and he goes to press in the middle of the park. He doesn't get to the player, and I saw Spurs do this a couple of times where they go and press. Same thing with the goal that came from Trent when he hoofed it forward and Szoboszlai won the header, and I believe it was Salah who scored that goal.
Yeah.
Chuck, you go to press, but you don't actually get to the player. So you are in the middle of nowhere, which means you are a sitting duck and you've put everybody else, the whole defensive chain, in a compromised position. Because when Dragusin goes there, now there's a gaping hole in the middle of the defense, which first is exploited by Szoboszlai and then by Mohamed Salah. So you look at that, and as I'm saying, it happened with that other goal I mentioned. There was also an opportunity with Szoboszlai. He missed the chance where on the halfway line, a simple ball from Alisson over the top of the defense where they're defending by the center line, and Szoboszlai was through on goal. As simple as that. And then the coach Ange Postecoglou has the unmitigated goal. He's got the the confidence, Chuck, which I don't know where he gets from to say he's just going to continue playing like that.
Delusion.
It's absolute delusion. Like, Ange Postecoglou, wake up and smell the coffee. It's not working, especially after you shipped 6 goals. Because, Chuck, I really do think there's a bunch of those goals where they really could have done better defensively. And I know you can say this about a lot of goals that are scored, because most in football is a low-scoring game, and most goals come from defensive mistakes, right? But there are some mistakes where you're looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, come on, guys. Come on, just do the bare minimum here and ask these world-class players to go over and above, or to exhaust their talents in order to get past you. Don't give things to them on a platter, and that is what Spurs were doing, Chuck.
Yeah.
But that was also, as I'm saying, to take nothing away from Liverpool, because Liverpool turned up to the Tottenham Hotspurs Stadium and recognized that, these guys want to go toe for toe. Like, guess what we're going to do? We might not have shown it as we have in the past under Jurgen Klopp, but we still are savants when it comes to the counter-attack. And the way in which Arne Slot set up for me, Chuck, that 4-2-4, where Tshabalala was a wonder in this game. I keep mentioning him because I really wanted to see what his XG was after this game, because he kept on having chance after chance after chance. If it's not for him to take a shot at goal and score the goal himself, it was to set up other players. And the way that him and Mo Salah were crossing, with Salah coming into the middle and him going wide, and the same thing with Diaz, because Diaz was also playing centrally, and they're overloading that front line with Gakpo being the left wing and Diaz swinging from the middle, going out around the outside on the right hand side for his final goal as well. Arne Slot looks like the real deal, and the manner in which he set up to exploit what Ange Postecoglou was doing was brilliant. It was like par excellence. But I cannot get away from the fact that Ange Postecoglou, as you say, is delusional and does not have a bone of pragmatism in him. He just keeps going and going and going, and his players seem all too happy to just play like that. It must be a lot of fun, right? But I don't know how much fun it actually is when you are copying these kind of scores and you just keep conceding goals. So I do think the log leaders are really good for their lead at the top of the log, that is Liverpool. But I can't help but come away from that match against Spurs thinking to myself, man, Spurs really are just giving themselves up to be had like that.
Yeah, Jay, when you look at that display, I mean, I'm also with you in terms of Liverpool were great, but when you look at Spurs, man, there's a lot that's left to be desired, because, I mean, look, Mo Salah is great, probably one of his best seasons, I mean, because he's got goals and assists in the double figures already in this season, right? Luis Diaz, seems to be finding a bit of form. Gakpo didn't find the back of the net, but he was menacing. But for me, Jay, when you've got McAllister and you've got Szoboszlai as goal threats regularly, that means there's something broken in your midfield. Metasau was not getting close. Papi Metasau was not getting close to anyone. Basuma had a horrible game, could not pass to save his life, hence the 6 goals.
And then he's not tracking back.
Not tracking back at all. So it makes sense if Trent is a threat because he overlaps, if Salah is a threat. But if the central midfielders, apart from Gravenberch, are having a field day, that poses questions in terms of how you guys set up. If you think about it, Jay, Spence had a decent first half, like first 20 minutes. He was stopping Salah and he was quite good. But at the back, in terms of what's around him, you can't stop a train by yourself, because it's all crumbling all around him. Because as you think, Dragiston is not playing at a level that shows of his experience. Or Gray, who's next to him, Archie Gray, if I'm not mistaken, he's wet behind the ears, and he has to deal with Salahs and the Van Dijks and the Gravenbergs and all that stuff. And then Pedro Porro was a shadow of himself. He didn't have any bit of confidence going forward, because Spurs were just watching Liverpool play football. And so I think they need to be a bit more pragmatic. I think they need to think about the situation, because I get it with Manchester City. They're in a rut. They can't help it but lose. But if you can score 5 against Southampton and put United away at the FA Cup, play some football when you get to Liverpool. Don't just lie there. Also, word of warning: if Son is moving, don't buy him. I from those displays, man, you can't beat his man. You can't run past anyone anymore. He was not really a threat. So
Chuck, are you
on the
saying
market.
Heung-min Son is finished?
Oh, it looks like it, man. Because I've thought about the idea of putting him in my FPL team, but every time I'm like, no, I've been vindicated, because he offers not that. I mean, the only thing that was
Breaking news.
The only thing that was right in Spurs' side was Maddison, who was trying, because he got the goal, and maybe Jet Spence, who tried. Fraser Foster's not the deputy. We get it. When Vicario is fit, he comes back. Fine, you can fix that. But when Bentancur is fit, who are you going to partner him with? Bissouma, mistake. Mistake. So there are question marks all over that side. And at least if he was pragmatic and he held fort or had some defensive shape, he'd be better. But on to Liverpool, Jay. Mo Salah, as the goals kept going in, I thought to myself, sooner or later he's going to find the back of the net, which he did twice. Gets the assist as well. Looking great, looking amazing. What Slot has found for Trent is not, because there was that dilemma or puzzle in terms of where do you put Trent? Do you put him as a 8 because he needs to get on the ball and play those defensive balls, or does he stay out wide because he can still open crosses? Let that man be in the system. Let that man be, because he's got an understanding with Mo Salah. Number one, he pushes up. He pushes up when he wants to. When he's got someone who is good enough in the defense. Because before he had Fabinho to mop up all of his mistakes, if I could say, if he's out of position.
Howlers in defense.
Fabinho was there, and then Fabinho goes away, and then you've got issues. But now you've got Gravenberch, who's playing quite well, so he's mopping up and cleaning up behind Trent. And in fact, didn't have to mop up in this game because there was no threat. But he's got all the guys ticking well. I mean, your Darwin Núñez will be Darwin Núñez. He can't work miracles. He can only play good football, right? But I think he's got his balance right in terms of McAllister and Szoboszlai playing decent football. And I think when the time is right, he'll play Curtis Jones when he's on song. He'll play Harvey Elliott when he can. But if you think about it, Jay, he made 5 subs on the day. They did not skip a beat. They still were Liverpool. They were still menacing. I think they scored a 6th goal even after all those subs. So I think kudos to Arne Slot. The question is, Jay, though, can they be stopped off this display? Do you see anything going wrong for them at this point? Is it an injury? Is it a team being resurgent at Chelsea and Arsenal, a City, even if we could add them in the title mix? Or do you think it's Liverpool all the way?
It's Mo Salah. Something happening to Mo Salah that would be a huge pulling of the brakes where Liverpool are concerned. You know what? This Liverpool side have been great. And as you mentioned, the fact that with a McAllister scored the goal, you see McAllister playing a lot closer to the box, whereas under Klopp he was being deployed as the 6 sometimes, and while he does have a good passing range, that's not quite his position. That's not what he played when he was at Brighton. That's not where he plays when he plays for Argentina. And with Arne Slot, for example, he's playing in his more preferred positions where he's playing closer to the box. So he has galvanized this team, and whether it's Robertson who's out and Tsimikas is coming in for him, now you have Ibu who's been out with injury, and he's had guys fill in for him as well. Trent was out for a little while, and they did not miss a beat, and it honestly does look like as a collective they are much stronger than they were last season. Last season, I really do feel as though that they were absolutely reliant on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is Salah, Trent, Van Dijk, as well as Alisson in goals. And I think this season, as a collective, as I'm saying, they are playing better. Man for man, they're playing better. You talk about Luis Diaz. We're finally seeing the kind of output that we saw from him in Portugal. He's still not yet. This is Slot managed to get Darwin Núñez to play up to his price tag, but Darwin Núñez still does Darwin Núñez things. He puts in that great effort, and Jota as well. I mean, he's still Jota when he's not injured. He's on the field and he's scoring goals. But Chuck, even as the individuals are playing better and the sum, the whole, is also playing better. When you mention the fact that Mo Salah and the kind of numbers that he's hit, where it's 15 goals, it's 11 assists, we're not even at Christmas by the time that has happened. He is having a season which you could not imagine is maybe even better at this stage, at least, than his first season at Liverpool, which was all kinds of record breaking, And if he continues like this, we're talking about Mo Salah is going to score easily over 30 goals and is going to break the all-time assist record in a season, where he'll get past that 20 assist mark, and that is an all-time great EPL season, perhaps the best EPL season of we've ever seen, if it continues like this, right? And I think, Chuck, you cannot look at that and then divorce the results from Mo Salah's heroics. If Mo Salah slows down for whatever reason, whether it's form, whether knockwood, it's injury. Fortunately for Liverpool fans, there's no AFCON coming in January. But if this goes south in terms of the output, I think they are a lot more, not even a little more, a lot more closer to the pack. So The only thing I can see derailing them, and they've got such a comfortable lead that it might not even matter, right? This is why you build leads, so that if disaster does happen, you've got a cushion. But if Mo Salah is absent, either as Mo Salah or completely from the lineup for whatever reason for an extended period of time, and we're not getting these goals and assists and just these performances like week in, week out, then we're talking about a different Liverpool. I mean, that sounds very obvious to say, but in terms of they are absolutely running away with the league, or as the question that you asked, can they be stopped? I think the easiest way that they can be stopped, and if disaster were to strike, it would be in the form of Mo Salah not being this version of himself that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think the biggest contributor, the MVP for Liverpool is Mo Salah, because not only is he scoring goals, but he's offering consistency. And if you can have something consistent, you can build on that. Obviously, we won't overlook the work of Gravenberch, who's been a marvel this season. But I think that consistency gives them a lot, because consistent in scoring goals, consistent in creating goals as well, hence the numbers, right? And I think if you take that out all of a sudden, I think they become a different team, because as much as Alisson is back, we say the Spurs side was woeful. They scored 3 goals. They considered 3 to Newcastle. They considered 2 to Fulham. So if you don't have someone scoring on the other end, then disaster can strike, because, I mean, they dropped points in those 2 games, but they've still got a cushion, as you say, as you highlight. So if you take Mo Salah out, then you've got consistency that's lacking, because who's scored in 3 consecutive games outside of Mo Salah? You can't say Diaz, you can't say Darwin, you can't say Jota, because it's never happened. Everyone has been relying on Mo Salah to give them an assist or a pass to feature in the game. If Trent is passing, chances are Mo Salah is finishing. If Robertson is crossing, chances are Mo Salah's on the back of it. So I think if you take out Mo Salah, then a lot gets changed. I mean, obviously you've got Alisson back, so he'll show up more of the goals. But I think if Mo Salah goes out of that team, a lot changes.
Yeah, Chuck, I do think a lot changes. If I'm not mistaken, Mo Salah has been involved in over 70% of the goals that Liverpool have scored. That's a massive number.
Yeah.
You know, that and this is true of all the teams, right? If you take away the star player, they're a lesser version of themselves. I just think that Mo Salah is a greater contributor as the talisman, as the franchise guy at Liverpool than whoever else you want to put in that conversation when you're looking at the other teams in the Premier Division.
So it's a matter of, can Liverpool go all the way? Tell us what you think. If you think they can't be stopped, and if something does stop them from winning the league, is it a team? Is it an injury? What do you think actually comes to stop them? Speaking about stoppages, right? In the first Usyk versus Fury fight, we were close to getting a stoppage because Fury was knocked and we're thinking, is it going to happen? It never quite happened. It was stumbling around. The second fight wasn't as entertaining as the first one, Jay, but it was still a game of chess, physical and brutal chess, I might add. And many had Usyk winning like I did, but there was fair controversy in people saying, okay, Tyson Fury should have won that fight. I don't tend to agree with that. But Jay, Usyk still undefeated. We must remind people, still undefeated. Whether you want to talk about his cruiserweight, whether you want to talk about heavyweight, you want to talk about him at middleweight, still undefeated. Whoever he's fought, not lost to. But in the last 2 fights, Tyson Fury has lost. One was closer. This one, I think, was more heavily weighted towards Usyk. Jay, if you're Tyson Fury, what do you do next?
First of all, Chuck, you spend how many, 3 months not talking to your wife or kids? For what? For what? For you to go out there and lose? Like, you know that scene in Troy where it is that king who Helen left, Agamemnon, when Paris is there, flailing on the floor, and he asked the question, "Is this what you left me for?" This is the question that Tyson Fury's wife should be asking, and his kids, is this why we didn't see you? So you can go out there and get beat now, given he wasn't embarrassed out there in that boxing ring. But still, man, because on the flip side, Chuck, Usyk comes in with his comments saying he relies on his wife and kids. They help him to get these wins. And man, it's a win for families right now. But Chuck, in terms of what I think should happen with these two men, with Tyson Fury, right? With Tyson Fury, there's always been that dream matchup of him coming up against Anthony Joshua. But this is what happens now. This is what happens when the fights that need to happen don't happen in the time they need to happen. So what happens when you don't have a Dana White running your show and You guys and your promoters are the ones who are making decisions where time and again guys are attacking guys, or it's whether it's testing, whether it's not being in the right condition at the right time, whether it's not being able to agree on the money. This is what happens, because what has happened from the first moment we started salivating at a Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury fight is that Joshua has gone downhill, right? And one of the last times we saw him in the ring, he was speaking crazy after a loss. And you're like, man, maybe this man should not box ever again. And with Tyson Fury now, Usyk replaced Anthony Joshua, and as well after Tyson Fury and his series against Deontay Wilder as the core main event, right? Not the core main event, the co-protagonist in the main event with Tyson Fury. And we've seen it now, Chuck. And what we've seen is that Usyk is the superior fighter. He's the fighter of this generation. He has stamped his name that, as I'm saying, he stands on the mountaintop. If you're talking about heavyweight boxing in this time, for the longest time we thought it was Tyson Fury, because he was undefeated for the longest time. He was a linear champion, even when he was out with the troubles that he had, and kudos to him for being able to come back to the ring in the way that he did. But then it was decided in the ring, and it is Usyk, right? He's the man who's left standing. Whereas I don't want to see a B-rate fight now where it doesn't appeal to me as much. I don't want to see really Tyson Fury. I don't want to see him fight Usyk again, because I know all I need to know in his matchup against Usyk. I don't want to see him against Wilder, because Wilder should be retired. I don't want to see him against Anthony Joshua. I don't want to see him against Dubois either. I've seen Tyson Fury. He's one of the greats of this era. He's second in that ranking. And where Usyk is concerned, Chuck, I'd ride off into the sunset and retire as well, because while he hasn't fought Wilder and Dubois, he wants a rematch, because of course there was that was it a low blow, was he about to beat him? Maybe there's still a question mark there. So maybe if there is a fight that can happen, is Dubois. I just don't like Dubois. He doesn't sell fights very well. Like, I see him talking on the mic, I'm like, I don't want to hear this guy.
He's just not that guy.
He's just not that guy. So as a result, Chuck, I've also seen everything I need to see from Usyk, and he's 37, 38.
Yeah.
And if that man decided that he wants to walk away with an undefeated record, because again, everywhere he's been, he's cleaned out the division, and that's all you can ask for from a guy. You know, the question is there anybody else out there? I don't think so. So Usyk can ride off into the sunset and retirement, and I think Tyson Fury can join him as well, because also for him, more in the negative though, there's also nothing out there for him either.
I mean, Carl Frock said that we tend to be reluctant to crown people the great while they're still active. We wait to see what's going to happen, and maybe wait for them to hang up their gloves, and then we say, well, looking back, he had a great career, and he was ready to crown Usyk a GOAT because of his exploits. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that he's a GOAT, but I think he's amazing. He's amazing as a fighter, because if you think about the hurdles that he's had to go through, because he's always been the smaller guy against Joshua, against Fury. He's always been the smaller guy. And if you think about the golden years of heavyweight boxing, that's the size of heavyweight boxers. That's the frame that they had. Because back then in the Ali days, the Frazier days, the heavyweights were quick as well. Heavyweights were strong as well. They were agile. But now you got big, lumbersome guys who's...
It's because those Clickjoe brothers came into the picture and they ruined it for everybody. Now you had to be a behemoth to compete in the heavyweight division.
Shout out to the Ukrainian fighters though, because you've got Usyk, you've got Lomachenko, you've got the Klitschko brothers as well, who did quite a number on boxing in terms of you'll remember who they are.
That's very true, eh?
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about when the Russia-Ukraine war started, Lomachenko and Usyk took a year off to serve their country, and I don't know if it's worked out for Lomachenko, because I don't think he's supposed to be throwing or anything controversial against Haney. He's supposed to be just whipping that boy. But we'll see what his next fight is and what he does. But Usyk since then has been on the up and up. I mean, he's got into fights and he's won all of them. Obviously with the controversy against Dubois, but I think he's acquitted himself quite well. And I think, Jay, you can only beat what's in front of you. It's not his fault that it's not Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier or Mike Tyson in front of him. It's Dubois. It's just Joshua. It's just Fury. And he's beating them handily in terms of, I was convinced in both plays. And I mean, maybe the same watch that Ange drinks, he gave a bit to Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury says both those losses to him don't count. He doesn't count them as losses. Like, guys, he just got beat.
That's what Eric Ten Hag also said.
Yes.
the result doesn't count. What was the reason again?
It was because Bruno was sent off, I think, and it's like, but we can't take that back, so that result doesn't
And that was
count.
rescinded, and it's like it doesn't count. Like, you know, when you've had just too many blows to the head, whether figuratively or in the case of boxing, literally. These are the things you say. You start talking crazy, man. Like, that's crazy talk. You best get out of here with all of that, because what are you saying?
Because last year he said Happy New Year right after he got beaten. So, but I mean, speaking on Tyson Fury, I think I was a bit disappointed because he said to us that when he's selling the fight, because obviously he's no Daniel Dubois, he can sell a fight. He said all the other times and for the most of my career, I've been a jovial man, been joking around, but this time I'm serious. Hence, you got the full beard and he looks like a caveman. He looked like Kratos from God of War. You're like, oh, is he gonna throw it down? Nah, more of the same. He was cautious out there because once you get hit in the mouth, you get to realize, oh, man, when I was sparring, I was not getting punched by Usyk, but now I'm getting punched by Usyk, so I can't do what I want.
Allegedly, Chuck.
Yeah.
Allegedly, the training regimen of Usyk is that he goes 15 4-minute rounds, and every third round, a new fighter comes into the ring. I don't know if that's true. So I say it's allegedly. I saw that like on a deep dive down a rabbit hole online. Like I saw that. But if that is true, yeah, man, that man is.
I need another one. He's broken.
Breed.
Give me someone else. He's broken. You know, sidetrack. You know what's very interesting about boxing? All these sparring sessions are just mystical and they're of legend because there are so many stories that everyone seems to refute or someone seems to confirm. Like someone who isn't a well-known guy but is a trainer for whoever says, no, Tyson Fury fought whoever and beat him. But it's never mainstream news for us to understand and consume in terms of, oh, okay, they sparred 5 rounds. Whoever got the better of him, let's see what happens in a real fight. It's always surrounded in clouds and I don't know what happens in sparring matches because you get to see Haney was fighting Tank, but Mayweather had the tapes and then he released them years later. And you're like, guys, that's just practice. Can't you let us know what really happened? But nonetheless, Jay, I think in that fight, Tyson Fury did let himself down a bit because when you're the challenger, you have to go and win the title. You can't hope they see it in your favor. You can't hope that things are go the way you think they are. You have to force the initiative. You have to take the belt from the champion. And so I don't think he displayed a fight that did that. So I think it makes sense for Usyk to still be crowned champion. I think he dominated a lot in the latter rounds. And as one of the commentators said, that he didn't allow Tyson to have any bit of momentum. He knows how to win a fight. If you win one fight against one round against Usyk, you make sure to win the next and the one after that and the one after that as well. So I don't think I saw Tyson give enough to win it. So no controversy for me. Shout out to Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, Riyadh season did come through in the clutch. We've had some big fights in the last couple of years. This was the last one
add,
for
Jay,
this particular
if there's anything, because you did say you don't want to see Tyson fight anyone. There was an idea of Proteas versus Usyk. And if you think about it, Usyk can maybe still come down to that weight because that's where he found most of his success in his career. And people were saying call Turkey a Sheik and maybe gets that done. So maybe it's a fight to be done after Bivol Proteas 2.
Nah, dudes need to come up to Usyk. Like he's done enough. Unless of course he wants to do that. And he looks like he's cut from the same cloth as Saul, right? Where he's a fighter.
Yeah.
But as I'm saying, I would not be mad if Usyk says I'm done because he's done it all. You know.
Yeah.
As I'm saying, this was the last great fight for this year, and maybe we can say that we've finally feasted. We'll see what becomes of the year that is to come. We both agree with the result of Usyk. Not mad if Usyk goes away from the sport. Same thing with Tyson Fury as well. Is there any fight you want to see these two guys involved in? If there is, please do mention it down in the comments. Thank you once again for joining us on this particular episode of Two Up Front as we come up to Christmas. We want to say Merry Christmas to you who is celebrating and your family. Please do continue, especially when you are sitting around those dinner tables with your families and having those conversations. Direct them to the Two Up Front YouTube channel and have them subscribe, share it with them, and all around, like, comment. We're very keen to hear from you and to talk to you. And you can continue doing that as well on social media. You can find us on all social media pages. It is at 2UpFront Pod. You can find me at Jen_Mzulu. You can find Chuck at Chuck2Up. From Jay, it is ho ho ho, and Merry Christmas to you all. And I'm outie.
The Proteas got beaten or whitewashed actually by Pakistan, but we believe they can bounce back in the test arena. Tyson Fury got beaten by Usyk, but we do believe that he can bounce back, maybe in a rematch, maybe in a different match. But there's no comeback for being weird.